What's up, guys? Welcome back. So, as the title of this video suggests, it's going to be a long one, and I'm going to talk about my healing journey. Yeah, be prepared. It's probably going to take a while, so grab yourselves a cup of tea, coffee, whatever you want to drink, a bite, whatever it is. Get comfortable, and let's get started. So, I want to start with, I'm almost going to start in the middle and then go backwards, I think, and then forward. It's going to make sense when I start talking. But basically, when I got married, I used to live in London. I used to live in the UK. I was born and raised in Kenya. I went to the UK for university and then ended up staying on in the UK, and I worked there, and I was there for 15 years. Until I met my husband, and he lives in Kenya, and so when I met him, I decided to take the plunge and get married and move to Kenya. It was not something that I ever thought I would do. Actually, once I'd moved to the UK, I was so happy with my life there. I never thought I would actually move back to Kenya, but that's the direction in which my life took. That's the choices that I made, and I got married and I moved to Kenya. Now, although I was, born here and I was raised here, my entire adult life was in the UK. I lived on my own. I worked there. I was independent. Yeah, completely. And when I moved to Kenya, I moved in with my husband and his parents. So I ended up living with not just my husband, of course, but with my in-laws as well. I wasn't working. I didn't have a job when I first moved here, so I kind of locumed whenever I got work. I opted to almost drop optometry altogether and chose to continue and grow as a makeup artist, which actually, if I hadn't got married and I hadn't moved to Kenya, I don't think I would have ever quit my job in the UK to continue my passion for makeup. And so, yeah, when I moved to Kenya, I started working as a makeup artist. I also worked as an optometrist on the side. I did both of them kind of hand in hand. And then in that first year that I got married, my mother-in-law fell really ill, and so I got married in August of 2014. By December of that year, her health was deteriorating. By February, she was in a really bad state. She suffered from trigeminal neuralgia, which is an absolute horrible condition to have. We had to take her to India for an operation. So it was my husband, myself, and my in-laws. We went to India. She got operated on, very successful. She's on her path to recovery, and while she was still recovering in India, my granddad passed away, and I was very close to my grandfather. He was a gem of a person, and yeah, while I was in India, he passed away, and so I came back. And then after that, life continued, and in September of 2015 now, my mother-in-law, her heart started failing, and so again we had to fly her out to have a heart operation. And that was in September. In October, I found out I was pregnant, and in the year of my pregnancy, we went through a little bit of an issue. It's a personal issue. I don't really want to talk about that because it's something that has been put to rest completely. It's just not worth bringing it up again. But anyway, we went through something in that year of me being pregnant, and when my son was born. And needless to say, when you're going through something, when you're pregnant and you're going through a crazy emotional crisis, it's not easy. And then I had my son. I ended up having an emergency C-section. I was trying to nurse back to health, look after this baby, and I went through some form of postnatal depression. And actually, I don't think I ever actually came out of it. Things just mounted on top of each other and got to a stage where, my son was like a year and a half, I think. Yeah, about a year and a half, to two. And I, it was just, I was continuing as I was, and it's really sad, but I don't even consciously recall that first year and a half, 2 years of my son's life. It was just so difficult for me. I was in a really bad emotional space, mental space. I hadn't told anybody about this. My parents barely knew. They did know about the things that we were going through. Kind of went through it as a family, all of us. But my husband and I took the hardest hit for whatever was going on. And yeah, so, they did know what was going on, but they didn't realize the extent of which I was suffering. Nobody knew. My friends didn't know, and I'm not somebody to actually talk about stuff like this. So me doing this is actually a whole new thing. But anyway, so it had got to a stage where there was one day my son was just being a kid. He was doing something, he was playing, I don't even know what he was doing. And I was furious, and it's not in my nature to get so angry, but I was so angry, I was shaking him. And I didn't even realize I was shaking him. And it was the look on his face. He was so shocked, and he was so hurt, but he didn't cry. He was just looking at me like completely baffled by my crazy behavior. And it was in that moment that, I just looked at him and I was like, I hate the person that I've become. I do not want to be this person. I do not want my son to grow up with me the way I am as his mother. No way. He was not going to suffer. Sorry, the hair in my nose. But he was not going to suffer because of what we went through. And it was, we talk about coincidences. Nothing happens by chance, I'm telling you. There is no such thing as a coincidence. Universe plans everything. But basically, when I met my husband, when my husband and I got engaged, and I met one of his best friends, he had gotten engaged to one of my friends today, who really holds the same interest as me in things like hypnotherapy, and just things like that, like things about life. We held a common interest, and we had so much to talk about. But she went on to study clinical hypnotherapy and regression therapy, and basically her partner had come to me for makeup. And I remember, we were just chatting. She'd said to me, why don't you come to me? Why don't you come for a session? And I was already feeling what I was feeling. But after that, this incident with my son happened, and I remembered her straight away. And so without anybody knowing, and at that time my husband was so dead against this kind of therapy. He was so dead against hypnotherapy. And most people are. If you don't know what clinical hypnotherapy is and how it's used to help heal past traumas, then it is one of those things where you're like, are you crazy? Are you really going to do that? And so he was, completely against it. But I basically called, her name is Kinneri. I called her up or I messaged her and I said, I really need to come see you. Can I make an appointment? And she gave me an appointment straight away. I think I went to see her maybe the next day, or, a few days from when I actually sent out that message. And didn't tell anybody. I went for that appointment, and no word of a lie, that was the first day of a new life for me. All we did on that first day was just talk. And it was really funny, but like when I went in, she was like, the first thing she asked me was, so, why have you come here? And I mean, of course, I should have expected that question, but I didn't. And for a second, I just did not know what to say. And then I started with, how I behaved with my son. And she asked me questions about like my life, my childhood. And basically, I was there for about, I think, 2.5, 3 hours. And all I did was cry. And it's the most bizarre thing because it is so difficult for me to cry in front of people and for me to just bawl. I was just almost bent over with tears in that entire session. 3 hours or 3.5 hours or however long it was, all I did was I talked and I cried. And, now that, like, she's one of my good friends today. So, when I talk about that session, and I was talking about it with her just the other day, actually. And I was saying, the best thing about that day was to have somebody say, it's okay to feel the way you feel, what happened to you, how you were treated, it wasn't right, and it's okay to be upset or angry, whatever it was, I have always felt like what I felt was wrong about, certain things in my life, certain people in my life, and just for her to say it's okay, like it is okay and everything will be okay. It's okay to feel the way you feel and to let it all out. Honestly, I walked away feeling 1,000 times lighter. It felt so good to get that off my chest. And, as I've said, I hadn't spoken to anybody about this. My friends didn't know, my family didn't know, my husband didn't know, nobody knew. And so to just be able to, that energy that I was holding, all that emotion that I was holding, it was really life-changing for me. And then in that one session, I'd never done hypnotherapy prior to that. I'd never done regression therapy prior to that. So I was a little bit anxious, didn't know what to expect. So in that first session, after the whole talking and stuff, she basically said, look, she took me under just to help me relax. And it really was the most amazing feeling ever. I felt like I was floating. I felt like, like in a space of heaven, I guess. I don't even know if that's what I can call it. But I've never felt such peace as I did on that day when she took me under. And, I absolutely wanted to go back for more. Like, there was just no doubt about it. But there was no regression done on that day. She just took me under to kind of get me, I guess, to see what it's like to go under. I was in complete control of my mind. There was she couldn't, like, I could have chosen to not speak. I could have chosen to speak. Like, I was in complete control. And I think that is the first thing that you're worried about when you think of hypnotherapy. You're thinking that you're not going to have control over yourself, your body, your mind, or any of that stuff. And in a clinical setting, that is not the case. You are in complete control. And so that was my first session. And then when I went back for my second session, that is when the actual true healing of my past started. Now, I really hope this doesn't trigger anybody, because I'm going to be talking about, I hate to say it, but suicide. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about that. So if you're somebody that gets triggered with things related to suicide or anything like that, please just, like, this is a warning. There's nothing like really serious in this, but it isn't, of course, that in itself is serious. But basically, when I was young, I, I've mentioned this in one of my past videos, but I was bullied in school. I didn't have any friends. I didn't trust anybody. And by anybody, I mean I didn't trust anybody, not my parents, not my sister, no family member, no friends. I had zero trust in basically people in human life. I I was a really withdrawn girl, but nobody could tell. I literally had a wall built around me and nobody was getting through. But inside, of course, I was suffering. Um, and this is, I'm talking about, when I'm really young, really, really young, like 10, 11, 12, so forth. When I was 10 years old, I think, I can't even remember, but from that kind of a young age, up until when I went for therapy, so from the age of 10, 11 till I was 37, 38, I have always had periods of happiness followed by crazy dips. Dips to the point where there'd be 3 or 4 days when all I would want to do is cry. Like, to get up in the mornings was difficult. To, just act like everything's normal, go out, do things. It was so difficult, and yet nobody knew because I hid that. I didn't trust anybody with my heart, I guess, and with the way I was feeling. I was so scared to just be trampled upon that it was just easier to not let anybody in. And that's what I just assumed, that, when we say where there's happiness, there's sadness, like good and bad, the whole polarity of life. That's what I assumed it would be, that when you're happy, you've got to be sad at some point. And for me, it was happiness, but with real dips, like real nasty dips of sadness. And I've always had that. I just assumed it to be normal. But there was a time when I think I was 14 years old. Things were really bad for me. Absolutely didn't have any friends in school. I used to be so badly bullied. I had somebody send me like a black rose of hate once in school. I was overweight, and people used to write wide load on my school bag. It was just horrendous. Like, just generally, it was horrendous. And I would try and laugh it off in school, which I had no other choice but to do that. But when I came home, I didn't really have the support at home. Back in the 80s, life was very different. We lived in a joint family, so with my my grandparents, my uncles, aunts, like we all lived in an extended family. And as much as it's so great to have so many people around, there's always family dynamics that do come in the way. And so really, I don't think as a child, at least in my perception of things, I had any support. My sibling, my older sister, she's diabetic. She has been diabetic my whole life. She was diagnosed as a diabetic when she was 1.5 years old. She's 2 years older than me. And so I've grown up with a sibling who was insulin dependent. And back in the 80s, the treatment for diabetes, it wasn't a common condition. So it was really difficult on my parents to have a baby, essentially, and a toddler who's obviously grown up with this, but who was diabetic. They had to inject her. It was the proper syringe injections. And, so my parents had a lot to deal with as well. My sister, obviously, from such a young age to be diabetic, to not be allowed to eat the stuff that the rest of us were allowed to eat. It was just difficult for everybody all around. And for me, being the normal child, it was just assumed that I was okay. But of course, anybody who's been in this kind of situation knows that it's usually the one who's normal who's often neglected. And I say neglected loosely because I really wasn't neglected as such, but emotionally, I just didn't feel I had support. I felt like I had to be good because my sister absolutely needed my parents more than I did. Anyway, came to a point where I think I was 14 years old and I was on one of my lows, And something had happened in school, and the event is really not relevant because I don't even remember distinctly what the event was, but I just remember feeling like I have had enough. There had been many times prior to that day where I had questioned why I was here on earth. I used to write letters to God, and I used to burn them so nobody would read them, but I would write letters to God to ask why I'm here, what is my purpose. I don't believe that my purpose on earth is to just suffer. I don't believe that. Why am I here? What is it that I need to do? Why am I being punished? What have I done wrong that I couldn't make right? And from a very young age, I've been questioning that. And, I'd wondered, I'd even thought to myself multiple times over, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be alive. There is no need for me here. I won't be missed. I'm irrelevant in this life. And so on that day, I was 14 years old, and something had happened in school, and I'd come home, and I just remember on that day, I remember feeling like it's just not worth being here anymore. And so we used to have a tin of paracetamol. By the way, please, if you have medication lying around that is easily accessible for kids, just rethink that. But we used to have a huge tub of paracetamol. Everyone suffers from headache in my family, so it's always there. And I remember taking that whole tin down. My mother was in the kitchen, and she didn't even realize that I'd taken that tub down. And I walked with it to the bathroom, and I opened the lid, and I took out a few tablets, and I held on to them. And it's weird, but like I was looking at the tablets, and I'm like, and by the way, I'm really scared of pain, so for me that was an easy way out kind of thing. No pain. But yeah, I was looking at those tablets, and I remember thinking to myself, it's that easy. Like, really, it's that easy. Nobody would even know. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and looking at the tablets and trying to talk myself into, not taking the tablets. So, of course, there was a part of me that absolutely did not want to do this, but there was a part of me that was at rock bottom, and I really felt I had no way out. And I remember looking at myself and thinking, it's been 1 minute and it's not gotten any worse. And I stood there for half an hour, just looking, just thinking, okay, it's no worse, still no worse. And that went on. And eventually I put the tablets down. I closed the lid and went outside. I popped the tub back up into the cupboard, and I walked out of the house. And I told my mum I'm just going for a walk. And we're really fortunate that we had a big enough area in our, like outside our house, a garden compound area where I was able to walk without anybody seeing me. I was, up in the area that I could walk where nobody could see me. And I was there for about 3 hours. My mom kept calling me to come for dinner and stuff, and I couldn't. I knew that the only time I was going to go back in was when I felt strong enough to walk in, to go upstairs, to do my thing, go to sleep, and wake up the next morning. And that's what I did. And this coincided with the time that I'd had my major dip. And so when I went through regression, so in that hypnotherapy moment, I don't know how she led me to this moment. So I guess she just asks questions, and I was transported back to this moment. And she was like, how do you feel? And actually, before this moment, I was 10 years old, and she asked me, how do you feel? And I was crying, and I was like, I'm not happy. And she's like, what's going on? I said, I don't want to be here. She goes, what do you mean you don't want to be here? And I said, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here on earth. I don't like it here, and I don't want to be here. And she said, okay. And then basically through, I guess, with the wisdom of today, going back in that moment and seeing my life and seeing it from a higher perspective, I basically saw that I had taken on so many people's emotions and negativity that I took it as my own, and it was bringing me down. And so, with basically she helped me release all of that, release all the negative energy that I was carrying, the negative emotions that I was carrying, energies of other people, departed souls, that kind of stuff. And so I released all of that and immediately just felt so much better. And then from 10, I jumped straight to 14 at this moment where, I saw all of this, the pills and all of that. And again, it was the same thing, that in my head, there was so much going on because of other people around me. I had taken on other people's energies and negativity, and the sadness, the deep sadness that I felt, that dip that I had every year, every so often, was somebody else's depression that I was carrying, not my own. And when I released that, it was literally like a weight, massive piece of weight had just gone. And honestly, since that session, I've not had a single dip. Those were the fundamental times in my life when those decisions that I made, the choices that I made in those moments, have affected me today. So it's funny how there was an incident when, I'm going to backtrack. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place. I'm hoping to just get this out in one go and hopefully it makes sense. But I was a chocolate addict, and I didn't realize I was an addict until I explained how I think about chocolate. So before I went for these sessions, I loved chocolate, and I still do. But for me, chocolate was something that I thought about all of the time. If there's chocolate at home, and I know there's chocolate at home, I would find a way to eat that sneakily. So I wouldn't be able to do it openly. I would have to sneak it in, to the point where I would go to sleep thinking about how I'm going to get that chocolate. And I didn't realize that that's the mind of an addict. I was addicted to chocolate. I could eat and eat and eat and not realize. I used to have major cravings for it. It was difficult. Like to go without chocolate was difficult. But yeah, I didn't realize it was an addiction until I spoke about it with Kinneri, with my therapist, and I was like, I don't know if this is normal, but basically, I want to be able to just stop eating chocolate. I want to be able to walk past chocolate, basically, something as simple as that. Like if I see it, I have to eat it. And so when I explained all of this to her, she was like, that's like an addiction. And that will stem from somewhere. Yeah. So absolutely. When I was 11 years old, I had an incident with somebody in my life whereby I was punished for eating or buying chocolate. I'm not going to go into the details because it's not relevant anymore, and I don't want the persons affected or involved to feel anything from this. I've made peace with all of this, so yeah, I'm not going to go into the details, but basically something happened where eventually the end result was me being punished for having that chocolate. And it was a horrible punishment. I was hit with a shoe, basically. In that moment, I had basically decided that no matter what, no matter who said I couldn't eat, it just didn't matter. I will make sure that I am able to eat chocolate whenever I want. And in that moment, I had sealed into place my addiction. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds overdramatic, but really, that is basically what happened. And when I saw that, I mean, I'd completely forgotten about this in my conscious mind. This was not even part of my recollection. But when I went back, I'm so sorry, my throat. When I went back in time and saw that that was the decision I made, I saw the consequences of that decision as well. So, of course, the weight gain, the addiction, all of that. And I was able to reverse that. And so today, I still absolutely love chocolate. I will still enjoy eating chocolate. But if I want to stop, I can. And, that is huge for me. For somebody who could not turn away from chocolate, last month I decided I want to go 21 days without chocolate because I just wanted to not eat sugar for those 21 days. And so I cut it out, no issues, no cravings, no withdrawal symptoms, nothing. And I would not have been able to do that before. And so that was something else that I was able to sort out. Now, medically, so I'm an optometrist by profession. I'm in the medical field. I am science-based. And I truly actually believe in all of this as well. But yeah, I'm science-based. So medically, for somebody to say to me that we can cure everything through hypnotherapy, yeah, that messes with my head. I'm not going to believe that. So this might be TMI for some of you, but basically, I've always had problems with my period. I got my first period when I was 11 years old. Now, again, I wasn't close to anybody. I wasn't close to my parents. Like I said, I didn't trust anybody, and I didn't even know what a period was. But we were on holiday in India, and I'd kind of heard people talking about a period, but I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know what to expect. But we were in India, and I got my first period. We were on holiday. And I was like, okay, I kind of know what this is. I don't know what to do. So, used wads of tissue paper as my sanitary towel. And that went on, the first day, second day. And then on the third day, I was like, oh, crap. Does this stop ever? And so I had to tell my mom. And, of course, my mom was like, you should have told me. Like, you need to basically, and then she explained the whole thing to me. But I didn't realize, I mean, I guess I knew, but I didn't realize that it's important to have a period every month. And so I got my period at 11, when I was 11 years old. And apparently it's normal to not have them every month when you first get your period. But my next period was when I was 12. And then after that, when I was 13. And up until when I went for my therapy, I used to get them once or twice a year. I have had every medical test done, ultrasounds, blood tests, whatever the gynecologist recommended. I had the test done. They thought I had polycystic ovaries, hormonal imbalance, underactive thyroid. I don't know. I don't even know what other conditions they thought I had. Did the test. Everything came back negative. Perfect reproductive system. Hormones are in order. No polycystic ovaries. They couldn't find a cause for this. And period once a year, guys. Like, that is not normal for a woman. But that's how I've lived my whole life. I always knew that there was a reason. My gut, my instinct was saying that maybe this reason isn't medical, but there is a reason. And in regression therapy, I found that now this goes into past lives. So if you don't believe this, it's completely fine. But in a regression, I specifically said I want to know why I don't get my period. And with that question, I went back through time, and I was describing a scene where it clearly wasn't my life today. However, I could describe the scene perfectly. I could, I felt the emotions of that time, and it was bizarre, but yeah, I felt everything. And basically, the energy of that life was stored in my ovary. Now, my left ovary, I think, is slightly smaller than my right, or something like that. But basically, that energy was stored in my left ovary. And it basically stopped me from having a period, because, as we know, with a period, you have an emotional upturn. You get really emotional, you can get depressed, you can get, anxiety, all of that stuff with a period. And basically, that energy of that life stopped me from having my period because I was not in an emotionally stable place. And so it was trying to help me by stopping my period. And guys, when we released that energy, I started getting more of a regular period. That's crazy, right? Imagine 30, I'm 39 now. Up until I was 37, 38, and when I first got my period, I would have my period once a year. After this session, it wasn't like immediate when I started being regular, but I would have them maybe every 2 months, every 3 months, but it was a hell of a lot more frequent than prior to this session. Now, that's not all that actually I managed to achieve in that session. When I was expecting my son in my 3rd trimester, I became lactose intolerant. It's a very common thing, and usually after delivery it goes away, which it did for me. A year later, it came back with such a vengeance that I had to stop. Actually, I had to stop primarily milk and butter, milk, butter, ice cream, things like that. I was able to eat cheese. I was able to eat things like cakes and biscuits and things like that had milk in it. That didn't cause me any problems. But drinking milk, having ice cream, things like that, I was severely lactose intolerant. Like, it screwed my stomach up completely. And in that same session, I saw in a past life that I had drunk poisoned milk, and that poisoned milk had killed me. And it was the same life where it was the energy of this life that was stopping my period. Now, this lactose intolerance, Kinneri was aware of it, but it wasn't something that we were tackling in that session. But when I was driving back home from my appointment with her, I kept seeing that glass of milk that I had drunk. I kept seeing that in my mind's eye, and I called her up and I was like, do you think that is related to my lactose intolerance? Because my lactose intolerance was weird. It was like milk intolerance, and like milk, butter, ice cream. It was weird. And she's like, if it is, then really you shouldn't be intolerant anymore. Now, bearing in mind, it's been a year of me being severely intolerant. And severely, I mean, like, if I had a bit, I would have the runs. I'm so sorry, like, I know that's TMI, but I would be in a really bad state for a few days. And so basically, after that session, I was like, okay, I'm going to try it, because my gut was saying that is the reason that I was lactose intolerant. After releasing that energy of that girl in that past life, it should have gone, right? That evening, I'd gone to my cousin's place, and I had a whole tub, as in a whole tub of ice cream, and no issues. And since that day, I can drink milk, I can have ice cream, I can have butter, and I have all of these things now, and no issues. And so, like, honestly, to me, that's miraculous. But really, it's all to do with energy. And my lactose intolerance went. So, yeah, crazy, right? But yeah, imagine the power of our minds, the power of unresolved issues, the power of decisions that we make when we're children with how we perceive things that are happening. It really does affect us in our lives. Like, truly, it does. Going forward, I was able to basically come to peace and come to terms and understand why things happened in my life the way they did. So from, why when I didn't trust people, what had happened in my life for me to not trust people? Why did I make a choice to never trust somebody again? Which is a choice that I made when I was younger. Through regression, I was able to see what had happened in my life, and in certain circumstances, it was basically my perception of things as opposed to the reality of what really had happened that basically made me make that choice. And it's really important to know that, because what we perceive might not really be the reality of what really happened. And I'm going to do further videos to explain all these little things in more detail. But basically, the sessions that I had thereafter were to tackle all these things that were affecting me today. The most liberating session, I guess, that I had was when I understood and saw for myself, and I really have to state this. All of this that happens, I saw for myself. Kinneri therapist was not telling me any of these things. I experienced and saw everything myself. So there was no way for it to be a lie. And, even if these things didn't exist, they actually did help me. So I don't even care if they're real or not. But truly, I felt like I was reliving all of this stuff. It felt real to me. But yeah, the most liberating session that I had was to understand why everything happened the way it did. So why I chose this life, why I chose to be born to my parents, and we do choose our parents. I saw that, and I saw why I chose this life, why everything happened the way it did, why I am married to the man I'm married to today, why I chose him, what my purpose is in this life. And honestly, that in itself basically allowed me to heal from all the trauma that I had been through, to come to terms with the fact that actually I chose all of this in some way, shape, or form. I was meant to go through all of these things, and to understand why. I think it's important that, and I'm saying this because I understood why every single one of these things happened to me, what lessons I had to learn, because there were lessons to be learned, which is why these things happened, and going forward, what I need to do. And hand on heart, I can't tell you how amazing it feels to know that no one can tell me otherwise today. But I know why I'm here today. I know what I need to do in this life. I understand that nothing happens by chance. There is a reason for every single thing happening, good and bad. And, our thoughts are our reality today. And it's really, really important to know that. And it's important to understand that we do control our own lives and our own destinies by what we project out. And by that, I mean what you think, if you give it enough energy, it will become a reality. And I've learned that. honestly, going through this journey has taught me to focus my mind, focus my energy onto what I really want out of life. I want to be positive. I want good things to happen in life. And so that is what I'm going to focus on. I choose not to listen to the news. I choose not to read the newspapers. I choose not to pay attention to drama because I don't want to energize that anymore. I want to put focus on growth, on spirituality, on becoming a better person, on helping somebody else, because that to me deserves more attention than all the rubbish that's happening. We don't need to energize that anymore because, that's steamrolling forward anyway. But yeah, I'm not here to preach. I'm sorry if that sounded really preachy. I'm really not here to preach. But that is my understanding of everything that has happened, of my journey, of what I've learned through my own sessions, through my own regression, experiencing it firsthand. I'm going to stop here, but I really do hope that this helps at least one person out there. If you're going through something and you have tried everything under the sun, or even if you haven't tried anything and you're looking for an answer, consider this. Consider this form of therapy. Consider, trying to get to the root cause of the problem and trying to understand it and trying to come to terms with that so that it never happens again. Just talking about something, although it makes you feel better, it doesn't solve the problem. That stuff keeps happening. Why? Why does it keep happening? And that's what I wanted to know. So for me, it was important to understand the why part of it. Why is this happening? How do I go and change that? How do I go and make peace with that so it doesn't happen again? And I was able to do that with this kind of therapy. So, the main thing is to seek help, honestly. If you're really down and you don't feel like you have a way out, just ask for help. That's all it takes. And it's the hardest thing to do, but honestly, it will change your life. But I'm going to leave you guys here. Thank you so much if you've watched this entire video. I know it's long. I really did just want to put out as much information as I can about my journey. But going forward, I will film more in-depth videos on certain aspects of this journey, what I've learned through research, through my own experience, through the courses that I've done since. And hopefully I will be able to help at least one other person out there. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.